Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast. You're in the right place if you're a growth-seeking being who acknowledges the challenges and delights of your humanity on the path to an ever more conscious life. If you want to feel inspired to love and accept yourself, to feel free to be and express you in all your brilliance, if you want to truly value yourself and others and feel energized and alive both at home and in the world, then sit back and take a breath as you explore and grow the brilliance of your beautiful human self with your host, the father of non-personal awareness and creator of the MPA process, Joel Young.
Hello, and welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. I'm so glad you're here. If you're brand new, this is your first time here, I'm so glad you're here. Congratulations on finding this wonderful podcast, if I do say so myself. And if you're back again for some more, I so appreciate you coming back and spending this time with me. If you are new, or if you haven't done it yet, why haven't you? Do go ahead, hit that subscribe button. You know, you can always send me a message. You go to the podcast website, which is www.beabrillianthuman.com. You can see there's a big purple button there. You can hit that and leave me a message. You can ask me questions. You can share your feedback or just say hi, whatever feels good. And of course, I will say up front, and I'll tell you again at the end, if you like what you hear, go tell someone. There's no better way than a good recommendation, person to person, obviously with safe distancing rules applying at the moment. All right, so I'm going to give a shout out. Shout out this week goes to Rebecca O'Banion, who sent me an email last week after listening to episode 27. And she downloaded the free worksheet, and she used the unconditional pivot exercise. And she said, thank you so much for this. I feel so much better now. I've been ill for quite some time and was feeling very unhappy about it all. Now I feel much more kind and capable towards myself. Thank you for your generosity. Well, this is exactly what I hoped for. And thank you, Rebecca, by the way, for taking the time and taking care of yourself and sharing your experience with me. Much, much appreciated. And I really want you to benefit, the way that Rebecca has. So if you haven't already listened to last week's episode and downloaded that worksheet and actually used it, go do it. Just tap www.beabrillianthuman.com/27 into your browser. Click that big purple download the free worksheet button and give it a go. And I'd love to hear about your experiences of using that exercise. And you can email me like Rebecca did on joel@nonpersonalawareness.com, or contact me via social media, or even leave me a voice message. Like I said, there's that big purple button on the website, and it's also on all the show notes pages, so you can't miss it really. And on social media, of course, I'm mostly at Joel Young MPA. The Facebook page is NPA Rocks, and on YouTube, it's just youtube.com/Joel Young. Now, speaking of social media, last week I put out a question on social media asking people what's the biggest issue that's coming up for you during lockdown and all that's going on with the COVID-19 virus. And there were a few distinct themes that came to light, one of those being summed up nicely by Vanessa, who commented, wishing I had trust in the media and our government, and certainly not sure what information to trust and from whom. So in this episode, we're going to take a deep look at trust. We're going to unpack the whole concept of trust and cast a discerning eye on why it's important, what builds it, what earns it. And I'm also going to offer some suggestions on, where you might find a consistent supply of it amidst all that's going on. And I'm also going to be offering you 3 very practical ways that you can access the feeling and the vibration of trust without compromising your natural intelligence or integrity, so that you can experience more trust in these uncertain times. And you'll discover why trust is so vital for a flourishing life. And you don't necessarily need to resonate with having issues of trust with the media or the government to be sort of enriched by this episode, because trust and issues around it is something that's really embedded throughout life, both in good times and crazy times. Sound good? Let's get into it. Okay, so if you happen to trawl through my social media streams, you'll see that trust is a theme that I come back to regularly. And, I do have some key perspectives on the topic, which come from my experience and I guess you call it my general study of humanity over the years. Now, that being said, on occasion, I do like to do some background research for a podcast. And for today's episode, I came across a fantastic video by Rachel Botsman, who literally wrote the book on Who Can You Trust? I loved the way that she languaged the topic, and her ideas really confirmed my own experience. So today I'm going to be really leaning heavily into her work as we go through. And she also offered a map of trustworthiness, which is a great launch pad for some inquiry work, which I designed, and which I'll be offering you later. And again, if you're interested in seeing that video, I'll link to it in the show notes, again, which today's episode show notes is www.beabrillianthuman.com/28. So let's start by looking at why trust is such a vital part of having a brilliant human experience. Well, Rachel says at the top of her website, I'm fascinated by how trust enables us to navigate uncertainty, place our faith in people, and take leaps into the unknown. Well, no wonder that trust is such an issue right now because, uncertainty is rife. And one thing's for sure, globally, we've all had to take a leap off the cliff or the cliff edge of the known and very much in uncharted territory. And, in this case, it's not like it's been a voluntary choice. So that being said, while the unknown can be sort of hugely uncomfortable, it's a state that's vital for innovation and change. Trust is a conduit for new ideas to travel, is how Rachel describes it. And it is quite literally required for new things to happen. And, there's one perspective that I'll stand behind about the gift of what's happening on the planet right now. It's that, humanity has been way overdue for some new ways of relating to each other and to the planet, for some time now. And, whether it's our environmental disregard, social inequality, or, addiction to consumerism, our behaviors have been unsustainable, and the forces of commercialism have been, proclaiming that change isn't possible. And if this crisis has done nothing else, it's given us all a direct experience of how untrue that is. And the thing is, as humans, we love the known. Even as a growth-seeking being, which I have no doubt you are if you're listening to this podcast, there's still an underlying pull in your human psyche to seek and stay in the known. And it takes an act of conscious intention to defy the gravity of that pull and stretch into the unknown. It takes an act of trust. Now, Rachel describes this as a trust leap, taking a risk to do something new or in a fundamentally new way where we don't know what the outcome may be. And she makes the really important point that if you can't take a trust leap, then you become stuck in a sea of uncertainty. So if there's no risk, no trust, then there could be no innovation and no change. So trust really is a currency that's so important as we enter this phase of change, so we can embrace the new world and new ways, whatever that becomes. But here's one of the tricky and often missed things about trust. Trust is both highly subjective and highly contextual. It's subjective because only you get to decide who and what you trust. But how about the contextual piece? Well, this is actually really important because it's sort of so easy to generalize trust or, perhaps more commonly mistrust. And that can exclude you from, potentially positive experiences. Now, Rachel demonstrated this really well in her video by asking the audience which organization they trusted more, Uber, Facebook, or Amazon. Well, spoiler alert, Amazon won, but that wasn't the point. The point was that it was a fairly useless question because there was no context. It was likely, she said, that Amazon won because we've generally experienced that they deliver packages when they say they will. But if she'd asked, do you trust Amazon to pay their taxes? The answer may have been quite different. So let's give a more personal or maybe local example. So you might have a friend you trust to show up for outings on time and contribute to the fun of things, but you wouldn't trust them with your secrets. Whereas another friend you would trust to take your secrets to the grave, but you'd never trust them to bring their share of the food on a Bring Lunch to Share event. So do you trust these friends? Well, it depends. It's a contextual thing. And why is this so important, I hear you ask? Well, I'm about to encourage you to focus on and invite more trust into your life. And as I said earlier, I'm going to encourage you to do that without compromising your natural intelligence or integrity. And context is key here. Okay, time for a bummer. Time for a bummer. At least what I'm about to say might seem like a bit of a bummer at first, but bear with me because there's light at the end of the tunnel. So here's the thing. No matter how enlightened you think you are, the day-to-day operational matrix within the world is personality. And your personality and the personalities of others are full of contradictions. Now, the generalized approach to trust, which is, that's the baseline for societal ideas of what and who you can trust, is sponsored by a romantic notion that these personalities are or should be consistent. But at some point, they're not, have you noticed? And if we hold the expectation that they should be, then we've set ourselves up for disappointment and feeling like our trust is broken. So let's face some facts. Here comes the bummer. You ready? Okay. Governments lie, and they always have. Dun, dun, dun. I mean, history tells us that, right? For the good of the people, air quotes, or again, air quotes, for national security, truths are withheld, and lies are spun. Now, this isn't a recent turn of events. It's not like we've suddenly got these governments that tells lies. It's been the case since the idea of governance began. But the thing is, governments also tell the truth. They share plenty of information that's, as factual as they know, which is free of spin, and fully intended to serve the people. I mean, just go to gov.uk and you'll find a ton of unsullied truth about laws, citizenship, housing, tax, etc. And again, another bummer. People have always shared false information. So sometimes knowingly with an agenda, and sometimes just because a newer truth hasn't come to light for them. I mean, have you ever told someone you're fine when they asked you how you are, but actually, that's not the truth? You're not fine. But again, people also share accurate truths all the time. What's the time? Looks at watch, 4:10. How are you feeling? I feel like shit. It's like we tell the truth as well. And people betray themselves all the time. I mean, self-denial is part of life. It's often actually how we pace ourselves in difficult to digest new situations. For example, denial is a well-documented stage of the grief process. And people are also completely honest with themselves all the time. Now, I'm not highlighting this as an act of cynicism, trust me. I'm just trying to make 3 points here. So firstly, it's an invitation to surrender. Water is wet, personalities are inconsistent. Expect water to be dry. Obviously, that's going to set you up for disappointment. Same goes for expecting personalities to be consistent. And inconsistency isn't intrinsically untrustworthy because, in the context of trust, that inconsistency is made up of both untrustworthiness and trustworthiness. Which brings me to point 2, which is to highlight the importance of context. So if you're experiencing a lack of trust, as an issue, then you probably want to feel more trust, right? Now, feeling more trust requires looking for, finding, and focusing more on that which is trustworthy. And if you're willing to surrender to the expectation that people and organizations will be consistently, wholly, and always trustworthy, then you'll be much more able to recognize and acknowledge that we are all patchworks with pockets of ourselves that are trustworthy and those that are not, and that those pockets are defined by context. Now, that gifts you with the ability to be clearer and more discerning in your search, and more pockets of trustworthiness are going to open up for you. And the third point I wanted to make, by pointing out the contradictory nature of personalities, is that trustworthiness and untrustworthiness are not personal. Now, in one sense, that's just because inconsistency is it's the nature of personality. And that means that an inconsistency demonstrated by someone else's personality isn't really about you. It's simply a function of their personality. And not taking it personally, it empowers you and it sets you free from the entanglement with that. But if we dig a little deeper, we'll find something which actually is much more powerful and much more useful to you, which is that trust and mistrust are not personal because they are, like all manifestations and experiences, energies. And tuning into any particular energy will generate associated feelings, beliefs, or judgments and behaviors. So, tuning into mistrust will generate a feeling of mistrust, which will likely lead to a judgment call of untrustworthiness. By the same token, tuning into the energy of trust will generate a feeling of trust and likely a judgment call of trustworthiness. Now, I want to be clear here. I'm not encouraging you to tune into trust in an attempt to dismiss or deny your discernments about who, what, and in which context you place your trust. In fact, my intention here is to offer you perspectives that will allow you to be more discerning. The usefulness and power of embracing the idea that trust is a non-personal energy that you can tune into is in the context of issues of suffering from experiencing a lack of trust. To repeat what I said earlier, if you're experiencing a lack of trust as an issue, then you probably want to feel more trust. And feeling more trust requires looking for, finding, and focusing more on that which is trustworthy, tuning into it. And realizing that trust is non-personal, it's an energy, it's a waveform, a frequency that exists everywhere, like a radio broadcast, and that you can tune into it. Well, that, my friend, gives you access to a consistent supply, a supply that can answer your prayer to feel more trust. All right, that's a lot. Let's take a look at what we've just covered there, or covered so far. So the main points are: trust is vital for growth and change. Trust is subjective and contextual. Personalities are inconsistent and contradictory by nature, which means that you're doing yourself a favor by dropping any expectations that it should be otherwise, because that increases your ability to go looking in the right places when you want to experience more trust. And experiencing more trust really means feeling more trust, and increasing the feeling of trust in your life is a matter of focusing more on the trust or finding the context where that trust already exists in your life experience. And that's the case because trust is an energy and available non-personally. In other words, there's a consistent supply of trust available through your attention to it. Okay, it's time to get practical. Now, different approaches work for different people at different times. So there's that context thing again. So I'm going to offer you 3 ways to help yourself experience more trust in these uncertain times. So first up, a quick reminder of one of the Be a Brilliant Human principles, and that's that sustainable and fundamental change comes with practice and experience over time. Now, this is especially obvious with trust when it comes to trusting people's behavior, and especially after trust has been broken. Because under those conditions, it can require consistent acts of demonstrable trustworthiness over a considerable amount of time to merit you giving your trust again in that context. Okay, but bear in mind that these exercises aren't so much about a specific context like that. They're really about helping you experience more trust in these changing and uncertain times where the lack of it has been creating anxiety, anger, or any other kind of suffering. And the other thing in the basis of these exercises is that because trust is an energy which you can tune into, that means that the source is in you, or more accurately, you have independent access to it. Now, this is great news because it gives you your power back. It gives you the ability to feel more trust regardless of the circumstances. And a point which I haven't really raised yet is that if you have been experiencing anxiety, anger, or any other kind of suffering because of issues around trust, then those states tend to suppress your immune system. So these exercises will give you the ability to shift your state, which in turn will support and strengthen your immune system, which I think is something we could all do with now, perhaps more than ever. Okay, so if trust issues are something you struggle with beyond just these times, then I'm going to encourage you to honor the kind of practice and experience over time principle and really embrace these exercises as an ongoing practice. And all these exercises are also really great as an intervention right now when clearly there's a lot more uncertainty in the air. Okay, so first up is using the MPA process. Right, so if you're new here or haven't heard of the MPA process before, it's a simple 6-line process that came to me back in 2007. And really, it's a simple way to stop taking things personally, which in terms of energies is where you're tuning into a vibrational energy which is causing you suffering. And I call that letting go of the yucky stuff. And it's also great for letting in the yummy stuff. And again, in terms of energies, I'd say it's great for including yourself in vibrations that you have excluded yourself from. And where there are symptoms of lack, that's the clue that you've excluded yourself from a vibration or experience. And lack of trust is a great example of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through how you can use MPA to include yourself in the vibration of trust, which in plain English means experience more trust. So if you haven't already, make sure you download the MPA process sheet, and you can get it for free from the show notes, which will be again at www.beabrillianthuman.com/28. And if you don't already know MPA, then, without it, really, this section's not going to make much sense to you at all. So, pause the podcast if you have to, go download the sheet and then come back. Pause. Welcome back if you just did that. Okay. So the MPA process, as I say, it's like a 6-line process, and 5 of those lines have a blank space. In that space, you put what I call a cookie cutter. That's a simple word or phrase that connects you to the energy you would like to let go of or would like to let in. Now, MPA works best when you're able to really discern the best cookie cutter. That's actually the artistry of it, really. And what I mean by the best cookie cutter, I mean the best word or phrase is one that truly connects for you. And when I say the artistry of MPA is in finding the best cookie cutter, it's because most of the time it's not what you think or expect, and it certainly rarely fits the standard kind of mind-body dogma. To explain that, like for example, many books will tell you that liver issues are related to anger. Now, I'm not saying there isn't generally some truth to that, but if you were to say, I've got a liver issue, so my cookie cutter should be anger, then you're following the dogma and not tuning into your own energy and your own expression. And the chances are that that word won't feel truly connected. So the process won't feel truly connected and wouldn't have as much impact. So for trust, you could say, I want to feel more trust, so I'll use trust as my cookie cutter. Okay, right. So if you're brand new to MPA and just want a quick and easy way to experience it and try it, then you could go ahead and just use that, just use trust. And you never know, it could hit the right notes for you. However, here's how I do it and what I recommend for you at whatever your experience level. So you'll notice on the MPA process sheet, there are 2 setup questions. I call them Q1 and Q2. Q2 is for letting in the yummy stuff, so we're going to use that here. However, to make that question more targeted so you can focus specifically on trust and still find a cookie cutter that's most aligned for you, I want you to add a little phrase before Q2, and that phrase is in relation to trust. So what you're actually going to ask yourself, so I'll add that to the front of Q2, is you're going to say, in relation to trust, what am I not experiencing that I would like to allow to come? So and what you do then is you just let your answer spew out onto paper or into a voice recording app, and then you listen to it or you read it back and notice which word or phrase pops out to you. And whatever that is your cookie cutter. So then you put your cookie cutter into the blank spaces in the process sheet and say the words, all 6 lines, including your cookie cutter, out loud. Just give yourself a moment to experience whatever you experience, and that's it. Simples, as they say on the advert with those strange meerkats. So now you can do this anytime that you feel you want to experience more trust. Just do the same thing. Ask yourself the question, spew, let it come out, find your cookie cutter, run it through the process. Simple as that. And I'll tell you what, MPA is literally the most direct way I know to tune into frequencies, vibrations, and feelings that you feel a lack of. Okay, so my second suggestion for how you can experience more trust is to use another exercise which you can get for free from me, and that's the unconditional pivot exercise. Now, I gave full instructions on using it in last week's episode, again, which you can find at www.beabrillianthuman.com/27. And if you haven't yet downloaded the worksheet, I'll also link that in the show notes for this episode, which again will be www.beabrillianthuman.com/28, because this is episode 28. So again, I'm going to assume that you have it. And I'm going to give you some specific instructions here. So again, if you need to pause and do that right now, go ahead. Pause. And welcome back if you just did that. All right. So the unconditional pivot exercise is an 8-step process. But in this case, using the word trust can actually work quite well. So in that case, you can skip steps 1 to 3 and just use the word trust in steps 4 to 8. So you'll start with, on step number 4, I like being in the receiving mode of thoughts, energies, and perspectives that help me feel trust. And then you'll walk yourself through the steps, 5, 6, 7, until you get to 8, where you'll be saying, I feel trust and mean it. So it's that simple. You can just use trust for those steps in the unconditional pivot process. Now, you can nuance this if you like. So you can either take yourself through the entire exercise, but frame, step 1 to focus on trust. So again, you can use that in relation to trust way to do it. So you can say, in relation to trust, this is step 1, write a short paragraph which describes the sucky or stressful situation, and then continue through from there. So again, that pre-phrase, in relation to trust, just helps you focus on that when you're describing your sucky situation. And the other way is you could simply contemplate which self-focused words and feelings work for you around feeling more trust, and then just take each of those through steps 4 to 8. All right, that's the unconditional pivot exercise. So the third thing I'm going to offer you, the final way, in fact, that I'm going to share with you to bring more trust into your awareness and experience. Now, this doesn't need a download. There's no pause required. Now, for this, I'm going to ask you some self-inquiry questions that will help you find and focus on the trust that already exists in your experience. And I'll also put these questions in the show notes so you can go and check them out there. Now, the secret to self-inquiry is it's not about using your mind to go seek out the answers. The power of inquiry is in asking the question, being inwardly still, and letting the answers find you. Now, I find it works best if you let your answers flow onto paper or, again, typed into a document on your laptop or whatever device you want to use. And these questions, just so you know, they're designed to help you focus on, access, and build a sense of your own trustworthiness, which will, of course, in turn get you in touch with the energy of trust. And again, it brings you back to the point of power, which is you. Now, the questions are going to invite you to ponder where in your life you demonstrate certain qualities. And all these qualities are those which build trustworthiness. Now, remember, this is for you. It's not a test. And some of the questions might produce less of a response than others, and that's okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to simply go ahead and read the questions out with a short pause between them. And if you'd like to do it along with my voice, you can just hit pause between the questions, go inside and let your answers flow. And of course, the other way you can do it is just transcribe or copy the questions from the show notes and do it in your own time. And for the best experience, if you decide to play along with me now, I'm going to address these questions directly to you. And you'll notice if you go to the show notes that they're phrased as self-directed questions, because that makes more sense if you're doing it on your own time. And also, I'm going to ask each of the questions twice here, because I want to be sure that you catch it as you listen through. Okay, you ready? Here we go. So let's start. Just take a deep breath in and let it go. Just let yourself become relaxed, alert, and still. Now just listen to each question, be still, and let the answer find you, and write them down. Where in your life do you demonstrate your competency? What skills, experience, knowledge, and resources do you know you have access to? Where in your life do you demonstrate your competency? What skills, experience, knowledge, and resources do you know you have access to? Where in your life do you demonstrate your reliability? Where are you consistent with your behaviors? Where are you responsive to others? Where in your life do you demonstrate your reliability? Where are you consistent with your behaviors? And where are you responsive to others? Where in your life do you demonstrate empathy for others and for yourself? Where in your life do you demonstrate empathy for others and for yourself? Where in your life do you demonstrate integrity? Where do your words align with your actions? Where in your life do you demonstrate integrity? Where do your words align with your actions? What do you trust in yourself? What do you trust in yourself? What do you trust about life? What do you trust about life? Okay, take a deep breath in, letting it out. And that's it, you're done. Yay, you for doing that exercise. Okay, well, I really hope this episode has opened some doors for you and that you feel you can access more trust in your life, especially as we go through these challenging times. And now, of course, it's worth saying that you can use one, two, or all of these exercises, obviously none. But I do hope you give them a go and do let me know what you experience. You can let me know by email, that's joel@nonpersonalawareness.com, or via social media. You can comment on a post or message me. Again, it's Joel Young MPA or at Joel Young MPA on the various platforms for the most part. And of course, you can always leave me a voice message with some feedback or ask me a question directly, again, via the Be a Brilliant Human website. And as ever, you're also welcome to get in touch if you'd like to do some one-to-one work with me. And you can find out information about that. And you can even book a free 10-minute call with me just to check that all the chemistry works. You can go to joelyoungnpa.com/sessions to find out all the information about that. I do hope you're keeping safe in these times, that the isolation is not driving you bonkers, and that, of course, you and your family are all safe and well. And if you do manage to pick up the virus, then, there's prayers here are for you, that you get through this and come out healthy and strong on the other side. So thank you so much for listening today, and I hope that this has stirred you, touched you, and given you a perspective that helps you to up your game in some form. Remember to subscribe if you haven't, and if you like what you hear, go tell someone. And all that remains, my beautiful friend, is to cue the moo.